So next up, wireframes. So again, this might be familiar, and it might be a slight review from Web Design 1. But your our next topic will be wireframes. Wireframes, they're basically a skeletal representation of all the content that will be going on your website. This utilizes basic shapes and lines. Really, it's a rough sketch in a lot of ways, a rough blueprint that you are creating in order to show where you will be placing different content on your page. You'll wireframe out different pages, what the home page looks like versus any secondary pages. Where that top navigation is going to go, and the logo, the banners, and just any content that you will be displaying on that page, you will show in your wireframe. So it's a visual guide that shows the layout and arrangements of all the website's content. And again, it's a blueprint. It's there to help you and your team understand, okay, this is our overall idea for how we are going to structure and lay out our website way before we decide on any other visual aspects. So before you decide on maybe color, typography, imagery, graphics, things like that, you really want to make sure you're laying down that foundation, creating that blueprint of where you want this website to go, how you overall would like the content laid out. So, why are wireframes important? Well, they help designers plan a website's functionality. By being able to strip away some of those visual aspects to our websites, we're kind of able to really focus in on the overall functionality of the website and the overall layout and structure of our websites. So again, because we don't have to necessarily focus on the overall design, the look of it, we can more so focus on the feel of it, where we're placing things and how we're going to get from one page to another page, maybe by utilizing buttons, but where are those buttons going to go? How much space should those buttons take up? And things like that. Also, it really helps to create a really great channel of communication. So wireframes really help us as designers communicate with our clients, with our customers, and our team members, our bosses, and things and individuals like that we'd be working with, because we can now show them, hey, before we get into the nitty gritty of the actual visual design, here's overall the layout of the website. Here's what we're planning. Because again, this helps designers plan out the website, plan out the functionality. So by creating wireframes, we can create something to show our clients, our customers, our team members, our coworkers, bosses, supervisors, whoever it is. We can show them, hey, these are my ideas. This is generally where I'm going to place everything, so that everyone is on the same page. And also you can start getting some of that feedback in well before you even start designing it or actually piecing it together. This also reduces the risk of making changes later on. Again, because you are now able to communicate your ideas for this website to your team, to your clients, whoever, then they can actually give you some input that might actually reduce changes or errors or anything like that going forward, because they'll be able to see what you're planning on doing well before you actually do it. Wireframes are generally sketches. Sometimes you can do a wireframe, just open up InDesign or something like that. Just again, using boxes, using basic shapes to create a really quick rough draft, a really, a blueprint of what you're thinking of doing. This will definitely help your team members to kind of come in and say, okay, instead of putting this, this graphic here, let's put it over here. Don't forget, you need to incorporate this type of information, right? All of that feedback you can get even during this process will reduce any type of changes, or reduce changes a lot, but then also reduce any errors or any omissions. Like if you forgot to incorporate something in the website, right? You didn't put all this work in to create a finalized website, yet you did it when you were just really sketching out what the overall website's going to look like. And that saves you time and money in the long run, because now you don't have to go back to the drawing board. You don't have to backtrack at all. because you already have a blueprint, right? You already have your guide for how you're going to visually lay out all of the different content within your website. And this also gives you an opportunity to create a better user experience. Again, when we are designing websites, apps, right? That UX design principle that we always want to remember is to keep our users at the center. This website should be a user-centered design. By taking a step back and saying, okay, I'm not going to worry about color, I'm not going to worry about typography or the graphics or the images. I'm really just going to focus on where I'm putting everything. Then you can really understand, okay, how is a user going to experience this? Are they going to be able to navigate this? Is it too much? Is it not enough? Am I emphasizing, right? Am I adding in that visual hierarchy like I should be? Is there enough contrast between maybe the size and the scale? Or even is there enough space between different groups of content that I will be displaying on this page? Right? You can start asking those questions with the idea or with the focus on the user to make sure that their experience is as easy as possible. So again, when you do create those wireframes, you're really helping to create that plan, that blueprint of the overall functionality of the website, the layout, the structure of the website. You can create wireframes to help communicate your ideas to your clients, to your customers, your supervisors, your coworkers, team members. And by doing that, being able to kind of communicate right from the beginning with them, you're going to really reduce the risk of errors and changes that need to happen later on or need to be fixed later on, because you can get that feedback right from the beginning, which will in turn save a lot of time and a lot of money in the long run. You never want to get to the end of a project and realize, oh, I forgot to add in this whole big section that will impact the rest of the website. That's going to take a lot of time and money to have to redo and go back a few steps, and it could delay the project as a whole. And then lastly, it definitely helps you create a better user experience, because instead of focusing on maybe some of those more detailed visual aspects of your overall design, you can now focus on more of that structure and layout, hierarchy, and things like that that will affect your user and how they experience your overall design. Now, when it comes to wireframes, there are different types of wireframes. We're going to specifically highlight two different types. So the two types we're highlighting today are low fidelity and high fidelity. So low fidelity, also known as lo-fi wireframes, they are the basic of the basic representation of your website's content and structure. You're not including images or fonts or color choices. You are just using shapes to represent graphics, images, and buttons. When it comes to typography, you're just throwing in a filler font choice. You might even if this is something you're doing on the computer, right, you're just throwing in whatever the default font is. If you are actually sketching this out on paper, you're writing it, so clearly it's not going to be in the font that it will be in once it's completed. But the low fidelity really is the basic bare minimum that you, in terms of visuals that you will add. It really is meant to help you understand where you're placing all the content and the overall structure and flow of the web page. Now, high fidelity wireframes, also known as hi-fi, they're a little bit more detailed. They're the most detailed type of the wireframes. If you're making a high fidelity wireframe, you're usually towards the end of that process, that step within your web design process. You will most likely move on to now actually creating like prototypes and things like that, where you're incorporating more actual functionality, where the website works, actual images and things like that. That comes right after high fidelity. So high fidelity includes some branding elements. You might want to start including the fonts, right, and the buttons, and also some detailed styling. So maybe you do want to incorporate some drop shadows or actual body text or colors and gradients, things that will actually affect the visual aspects of the overall design. And again, you might actually incorporate some functionality within the high fidelity wireframe. So you'll be able to utilize some UI elements like hovering over certain navigation drop down menus, but they don't won't be clickable. So you're not actually creating linked pages to each other. It's more so again that overall feeling and experience that your user will get from the wireframe. You're not necessarily just yet focusing completely on those visual aspects, but you are starting to somewhat incorporate them just to give your clients, your customers, your coworkers, your supervisors, just to give them an idea of, okay, that was the low fidelity, was that basic structure. Now I'm going to add in some of those visual elements, and also some of those functionality that we're going to be incorporating throughout the website. But again, think of this as like your final draft. So it's not even in a final stage of being able to launch. You're just in the drafting stage, the ideas stage of you're still figuring out where everything is going. The high fidelity is just a little bit more fine tuned. It's also the last kind of step in creating wireframes, because after the high fidelity, that's when you really start making a functional website. So that high fidelity, again, really it has the most detail of all wireframes, but it's still very basic, very giving you the overall blueprint, the overall idea. Maybe doesn't have all the images and the graphics and things like that, but you do have some of those UI elements being functional, like drop down menus. You just won't be able to actually click them to go to a different page. It more shows you how that will actually work if someone were to hover over something. You can also include some branding elements, right? You could start incorporating your fonts, buttons, how they're going to look, especially with those stylistic choices of, if you wanted to incorporate some of that body text, colors and gradients, you can keep it black and white for now. If, you're still not sure, that's still okay, but you can start incorporating color as you make those decisions, shadows, and any other stylistic details that you want to include. But overall, that high fidelity is a draft form. It is a blueprint for what you are going to do next. So again, wireframes, blueprint, very basic. They don't have all the bells and whistles. They really just are there to help everyone know exactly what you're thinking for the overall structure and the overall layout, with maybe some basic functionality incorporated in there, just to give everyone an idea of again what your vision is for the final stage of the website before when you actually go to launch. Again, low fidelity, a lot of times too, low fidelity is usually done by hand. A lot of times you'll see sketches, whereas high fidelity might actually be brought into a program where you are starting to piece together some more aspects of the website. You might think of like Figma or something like that, where you can kind of create a somewhat functional website, very bare minimum, that your, again, team members might be able to come in and give you feedback. Even the client can start checking it out before you really start building it out in something like Dreamweaver, or Adobe XD, or whatever that you're using. Obviously, for this class, we're using Dreamweaver. You can also create these things in Dreamweaver as well. But usually the low fidelity is done, again, maybe by sketching it. Some people bring it into, InDesign or Illustrator and just use shapes, because you're not really doing a whole lot. You're just really putting placeholders in for things. Whereas high fidelity, you want to start bringing that into maybe a program that you're going to be using for the rest of the project for the most part. So you might want to do the high fidelity in Dreamweaver, because now you're really kind of putting in some of those UI elements, and again, maybe even some of those branding elements and styles, and overall kind of starting to bring about the overall aesthetic of the design. But lastly, let's finish out with one tip. A wireframe tip that I want to leave you with is that you have to also think about different wireframe sizes, right, for each type of screen. So you could be designing a website, yes, for desktop purposes, but remember, your user may not, again, keeping that user at the center and also thinking about accessibility, that user may not be opening up your website on a desktop, right? It's like over 90% of individuals tend to go to a website right from their phone. So we always also want to make sure that we are incorporating wireframes for other screen sizes. So desktop, tablet, mobile, here are some standard sizes that you guys can utilize. Usually they're built into our program. Streamweaver already has these built in, but it's still when you are in that planning stage, especially when you're creating those low fidelity wireframes, you do want to take into consideration the different screens your user will be accessing this website on. That again helps you as the designer understand where everything should be placed and how things might be scaled down. And again, you might need to reorganize some things so things translate better from when it goes from a desktop to a smartphone, or from a tablet to a smartphone back to you'll definitely have to understand how all of that shrinks down and works with each other. And just by getting that idea, doing that from the beginning of making sure you're being conscious of the different screen sizes. Again, like I said, the importance of wireframes, it'll help you in the long run. It'll help you to address any errors or changes that need to be made. But instead of doing them later on in the project, you'll be able to do them earlier on, which in turn usually will save you time and money when you are taking on these types of projects. It also keeps everybody in the loop in terms of what you're thinking about, because you won't just be showing a desktop version of this to team members or clients or whoever. You'll be able to show, okay, this is what it looked like on a tablet or mobile device. This is what it will look like on a smartphone. Then again, you can start getting that feedback for everything, because they may we love the way the desktop looks, but there are some things we'd like to change about maybe the smartphone or even the tablet view. So always remember that, again, accessibility, not everyone's going to interact with your website the same way, but we always want to make sure we keep that user at the center of our designs. So we need to make sure we're taking into consideration what they're actually going to be viewing our website on. Are they going to be looking on their phones or a tablet or desktop? And then when we start designing, keeping that in mind, we'll be able to tackle different problems and issues along the way, rather than realizing them at the end of the project that might cost you a lot of time and money to kind of work backward or take a few steps back in order to correct. But that's it. That's everything I wanted to go over today with you guys. I will see you next time.